In this chapter of My Hero Academia, we see one of our fan favorite characters return from the grave. But before we get there, we've got to talk about clouds that are forming over Japan and actually posing a threat to the rest of the world. In My Hero Academia chapter 374, we pick up on a weather report happening in Washington State in the United States, where we have a baddie weather girl explaining to us everything that's going on as a result of the battles that are happening in Japan. Keen-eyed manga readers have noticed massive clouds and different weather formations starting to happen over the skies of Japan as this arc has continued to go on. And now we're learning that all these different heat sources have combined with a tropical storm that was going on in the area to pretty much cause a colossal cloud that could even get into the jet stream and affect weather going on in America. And that just shows you the massive scale of this battle that's going on in the final war arc of My Hero Academia, right? Because if it was impressive that All Might by himself was able to change the weather over a small section of Japan in the first episode, then it has to also be super impressive that all these battles going on are affecting the global temperature, right? They might have an effect on temperatures going on in entirely different countries, and that means that the world might have to be a little more connected than it was in the past, because you have threats and situations going on in this current age of quirks where something that goes on in one country might affect everyone, right? So everyone has to be a little more connected and maybe form some sort of better world hero network, I think, to kind of more accurately deal with and track threats and situations like this. The weather reporter goes on to say that if the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil can set off a tornado in Texas, then is this situation all because of the birth of the Shining Baby, which we know was the first quirk user ever in the universe of My Hero Academia? Was that original what seemed to be miracle the precursor for all these awful events that have gone on since then? And here the weather girl actually starts to go off script, saying that a single person's power can change the entire world, and also speaking out against All for One, who apparently all the other governments and the world we know are trying to get his good side. Right now we have some of the actual people who can be heroes who aren't like your regular heroes or superheroes, showing how in their own ways they can be heroes as well by speaking out against the evil of All for One and showing people that there is still hope in fighting back, despite the fact that governments have kind of bent their will to him at this point. From there we cut over to Kamino Ward, where Dabi and Shoto have been having their battle, and we see just a massive heat dome. It looks really crazy over the area where Kamino Park was, right? The area that was rebuilt after the All for One versus All Might fight originally. And we just see a massive just bubble of heat pretty much coming from Dabi, and no one else is really able to get close. You see Burnin standing there kind of questioning what's going on. Even Ida is trying to pull Shoto back because Shoto himself will even admit here that he's done, right? There's nothing else he can do. Ida tells him that he's used all of his energy, Phosphor took way too much out of you, and Dabi is still standing, as noted by Todoroki, who is a little shook, right? He's like, hey, why are you still standing there? Even after all we did, you shouldn't still be alive. You shouldn't still be fighting. I formed this move to take you down and you're still fighting. Shoto literally screams out, father's blood courses through both of our veins. So why is Toya the only one still standing? Kind of hinting that he feels like a little bit of a failure here in kind of the shine of Dabi's radiance, but Dabi is sacrificing a lot here in this moment, and Shoto's not going quite that far as to burn himself to the bone. It's here where Dabi laments the fact that he probably won't be able to bring Shoto to Endeavor. He kind of has to pick one or the other because he knows his body isn't going to hold up that much longer. So this is very much Dabi facing his mortality here, realizing I can't get everything that I want to get done in this life done. I need to now go and try to get the thing that's the most important to me done because I only have such a limited time left. So Dabi leaves the battlefield that Shoto is on and starts jetpacking himself, or I guess shooting fire out of his feet away to try to fly to where Endeavor is. But logically, I don't think he would have ever made it there, right? Or he would have just been ashes by the time that he makes it there. But he shoots himself in the air of his feet, kind of burning down a skyscraper next to him or melting it more so, because that's just the level of heat that we're talking about. And this is where Shoto starts desperately calling for Dabi to come back to the battlefield, like, hey, I can still move. I know you want to kill me, right? Don't leave me here. And it's touching that in that same breath, he's also trying to protect his father and keep his brother. There's just a lot that Shoto is trying to do here in his attempt to keep the Jenga tower from falling, but things are about to get much worse, because this is where we learn that yes, Spinner was able to get Kurogiri to activate his quirk and get them out of there, because we see a portal opening taking Dabi to a different area. Now we're going to cut back to that and the revival and stuff that's going to be happening in a second, but from there we cut back over to the main area with Shigaraki and Deku fighting on the UA skybase. It's here that we have Monoma commenting that this battle is going to be in the history books and he wants people to remember that he was part of the reason that they won, so he absolutely can't allow his eyes to close, and we get the first hints at what might be the end to this whole erasure situation, right? Because Manuel saying, hey, the wind from all this fighting is way too strong. I might not be able to control the water on your eyes if this battle keeps going like it's gonna. And we know that Deku is kind of the cause of that because he's doing so many attacks and doing so much damage and causing so much air force, bending the laws of physics with his gear shift, that air has to just be going insane. And that's kind of what it takes to defeat Shigaraki here. And it seems like the fight is a long ways from over, considering Shigaraki still does have something up his sleeve, or I guess in his gut. But I do think something's gonna happen, or some sort of air burst is gonna happen that is gonna make the water on their eyes kind of go away or splash into their eyes, and eventually we are gonna see an end to the erasure happening with Aizawa and Monoma. And we might even have an answer later on, a couple seconds in the chapter for us. And for those who are wanting any sort of Bakugo update, understandable, because we do know that Edgeshot was inside Bakugo doing all sort of healing and stuff. In this chapter, we do get reminded that Edgeshot is still inside of Bakugo, kind of healing what he can, and we see Mirio lifting up Bakugo's head, kind of getting near Best Jeanist, as the battle seems to have gotten away from them and we only see dust and smoke near them, since Deku has taken Shigaraki up into the sky. It's here when All For One says that the things people experience when they're young define the sort of person that they become. He says he trusts in people's feelings more than anything else, and we see a portal open behind Monoma, Manuel, and Aizawa, with Kurogiri, Shigaraki's hand, and present Mike coming out of it. And as we cut away from the area, we see Aizawa actually completely turn around, taking his eyes off of the battlefield and off of Shigaraki, leaving only Monoma keeping his eyes on Shigaraki to turn his quirk off, as we have Aizawa turning to meet eyes with Kurogiri. And this adds a whole different element to the battle, because yes, we did just have a shuffling around of the battlefields thanks to Kurogiri, who probably got quick to work doing what he had to do. Now we're gonna have a battle between Aizawa and Kurogiri, you would imagine, which is gonna really make Monoma very important here, and make it all the more important, like he just said, that he keeps his eyes open. And here we finally cut back to the All For One area, where All For One still looks fine. Even though he's rapidly rewinding, he still looks grown and beefy and like there's no problem. And it seems like mostly what he's been doing is just talking to Endeavor and everyone's still there. All For One says, I installed a microchip in Shimura's hand, pretty much to ensure that Kurogiri would act and do what I wanted. And because of that, we see two portals open up by Endeavor, kind of right above Endeavor. And Endeavor makes like a defeated face, right? Endeavor already looks like he's absolutely done here. Like he is out of it. Flames are kind of barely flickering on his suit. He has no fire on his face. He looks done. And out of that portal pops out Dabi. Dabi pops out and says, hi, Dad! And we finally have the final reunion between Endeavor and Dabi, and likely a situation where they are gonna dance to hell together. But out of the other portal comes a very surprising face, one that we haven't seen alive in quite some while, and that is Twice. And seeing two Twice clones literally come out of the portal, pretty much bringing Twice back to life in a sort of way, is really, really interesting, because it raises some questions here, right? We knew that Toga was eventually going to use Twice's blood to become Twice and use Twice's quirk. So when Toga takes Twice's blood and turns into Twice, she makes a clone of Twice himself, and those clones of Twice then use their double ability to make other clones of the actual Twice. So now, in effect, you do have a resurrection for Bubai Gawara Jin, but things have gotten pretty dangerous here, right? Because if you remember, Twice's original weakness was that he was scared that he was gonna die because he didn't know whether or not he was a clone, and the clones don't have to take that much damage to die. But here you have a situation where the clones might even know that the original Twice is no longer here and that they're all clones, and that kind of makes me think that instead of despairing, they might just go on a complete rampage. Like, this really, really makes things fairly dangerous, because now in this battlefield where you just have Hawks and Endeavor and Tokoyami and Jiro facing off against All for One, and that's bad enough already, you also have Dabi here, and then you have anyone who Twice has ever measured, which includes members of the League of Villains like Shigaraki. As Hawks feared, it could have included some of the other high-end Nomu. Like, we don't know what Twice is gonna bust out here, and it's incredibly dangerous even to just have a bunch of Twice clones appearing on the battlefield. So that's how the chapter ends, more or less. We see Hawks pretty much saying, we have to kill this guy now, as All for One says, hey, you more or less did this, right? You more or less killed this guy and allowed Toga to do this and allowed things to get to this point. So now let's see how things are gonna go when you have to fight Twice and you don't just take him out right away, right? Let's see you have to do this sort of Dabi Twice rematch and see how things go this time, even if you do apparently have Endeavor by your side, who I'm sure I'm gonna be keeping busy on my own as All for One. It really seems like All for One has created a situation here where he could just leave these two to fight the Twices and Dabi and go to wherever he wants. I'm sure soon Kurogiri is gonna send a portal to All for One and have him go to the Deku area. So Deku really has to clean this Shigaraki situation up as quickly as he can, because it seems like it's coming down to the wire and we are getting closer and closer to some sort of climax in this arc. Whether or not it's the last big climax, I don't know, but that was a rather interesting chapter of My Hero Academia. Now, we didn't even talk about Twice maybe holding one of Suyu's glasses or anything like that. We'll talk about all that kind of stuff when we cut back over to the Toga and Suyu area, or the Ochako and Suyu area. We'll see what's going on there in a bit, right? I'm sure next chapter or the next few chapters we will cut over there. But this has been my chapter discussion for chapter 374. I thought it was a very, very worthwhile chapter. I'm glad the whole mutant stuff is over. I really didn't like that plot line and how that was being handled. But we're finally back to the other areas with Deku and All for One. And I really, really hope that we cut over to the Toga and Ochako area or the Aoyama area, because I just honestly want to see what's going on there. Or, you know, Red Riot and Mina. Like, I want to see what's going on in those areas really, really bad. And now feels like the kind of break where all the other areas have advanced so much that you would kind of want to do that and catch them up as well, so we can get towards, again, that major climax that I'm sure we're going to have at the end of this arc, or a couple climaxes at least, because this seems to be the end of the series. But that's me, Vocal Pineapple. That's my thoughts on the chapter. That's everything that happens. Let me know if you guys like this chapter 374, and if you're looking forward to next chapter. I do believe My Hero Academia is on break next week, so we're going to be looking for a chapter the week after that. But any theories, any ideas you guys got based off of what happened in this chapter, let me know in the comment section below. And yeah, it's Pineapple again. I'll see you later. Love ya. Peace.